Oh, you beautiful, beautiful people. It is so wonderful to talk to you. I am in El Salvador in the middle of the rainforest. It's about to rain. You may hear some birds that are indigenous to the area. There's also a street that is right outside this window. No air conditioning, but that's okay. Beautiful, beautiful place, and happy to be here, but at the same time, I'm missing all my friends in the community, in the family of Memphis 901 FC. Apparently, it did not go well for the boys against Indy XI, but let me remind everybody that Indy XI is a very, very good team, and you have to play your best against a very, very good team. And it does not sound like that was the case. Lawrence Dockery was on hand to document all of the action. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the 901 Soccer Podcast.
Alrighty, folks, welcome into another brand new edition of the 901 Soccer Podcast. I will be your host this time. I'm Lawrence Docker. You can find me on Twitter at LDoc93. You can find the 901 Soccer Podcast on Twitter at 901 Soccer Pod, and you can find us on Facebook as well. You just go to Facebook and search 901 Soccer, and we should pop right up. Got a lot to get to on this edition of the podcast. We're going to talk Memphis 901 FC and the beatdown they took at the hands of the Indy XI. And then we'll maybe give you my thoughts on that, and then we'll take a quick peek ahead at Memphis's upcoming U.S. Open Cup game against Orlando City from MLS. So Saturday night down at AutoZone Park, it felt like the first time in a long time that we'd been able to go down to AutoZone Park and check out a Memphis 901 FC game. And as a matter of fact, it was the first time since the first Open Cup game nearly a month ago, back on May the 15th against the Red Bulls 23 team, that we were able to actually go and experience a full Memphis 901 FC game, as there was one rainout. I believe it was the Pittsburgh game? Pittsburgh Riverhounds, I think it was. That game got rained out and has been rescheduled for later in the season. So 65-29 was the announced attendance for the Indy XI game, which is quite impressive. One thing I did notice is that I think for the first time this season, the opposing team actually had a healthy contingent of visiting fans with them, as looked like there were probably about 20 or 30 Indy XI fans on the concourse hanging out over the left field wall there at AutoZone Park, and they had flags, they had banners, they had couple of guys with drums, not nearly as good as the drum setup that the Bluff City Mafia has going, but they did also have what sounded like a 2 or 3 man horn section, because I could very clearly hear and see some dude running around with a trombone over there, and I'm not sure if there was a trumpet to go with that or not, but they had some horns. So shout out to the Indy XI fans for making the trip down here and hanging out in the 901 with us. They seemed to be they didn't seem to cause any problems. So that's about all you can ask for. In terms of the game, the game got started off kind of sluggishly, and both teams, it felt like were just kind of feeling each other out, and you could tell that there had been emphasis from Memphis in training that this was going to be one that they were really going to have their A game to get a decent result. Indy's usually one of the better teams in whatever league they happen to be in. Obviously, right now it's the USL Championship. And they got a coach in Martin Rennie, who used to coach the Vancouver Whitecaps in MLS, and I believe, now don't hold me to this, I know for a fact that he got into the playoffs at least once, but I think he was there for 2 or 3 years, and he got into the playoffs every year. I could be wrong about that. If I am, feel free to let me know. It's not the first time I've been wrong, and it surely will not be the last. But in any case, Martin Rennie, been around the block a few times in the USL, coached in MLS, done decently there. Indy XI, usually a pretty good squad, so you knew this was going to be a tough day, tough challenge for Memphis 901 FC. And for the first 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes, it was most of the chances were going to Indy, but they weren't anything clear cut, and they weren't sitting here going, "Oh boy, the goal is coming" type chances. But eventually, they found there was probably, I'd say, 30th minute. Missed opportunity at one end for Memphis. Josh Morton crossed the ball in, and Collier got caught up in his feet, couldn't find a teammate. Indy comes right back down. They ping the ball up to midfield. They ping the ball to the former Danish international, whose name I can't even begin, Enevoldsen. Yeah, that guy. The guy who scored the first goal for Indy. They found him in the box, and it was actually some pretty fancy footwork. He juked 2 or 3 Memphis defenders out of their shoes, shot the ball in off the post and into the back of the net, made it 1-0. And surprisingly, I was actually rather impressed with this, that after they conceded the goal, Memphis, the boys in blue, came out. They responded very well to it, and they dominated the rest of the last 15 minutes of the half, had any number of half chances, nothing really too clear-cut. But you get into halftime, you're down 1-0. It's not the end of the world. Certainly nowhere Memphis hasn't already been this year. And they came out in the second half like they ended the first half. They were on the front foot. They were creating chances. Again, nothing too super clear-cut, but nothing, there wasn't anything bad happening. And then Wes Charpie gives away a bad free kick right at the edge of the 18-yard box. I'd say probably 50th minute. And he got a caution for it. He was lucky, actually, about a minute before that not to receive a caution. He got called for a foul at midfield and got mad and booted the ball all the way down past the goal line. And the referee just stood there and said, "Dude, what are you doing, man?" He had that universal, you all know that universal sign of when somebody just stands there and gives you that look of, why did you do that? Or what was that for? Got your hands out, or maybe your hands on your hip and your head tilted going, what? That's exactly what happened. So I was surprised Charpie didn't get a caution there. He made up for it. Not even a minute later, it got booked. Indy gets the free kick 19 yards out. Attacker steps up, takes it, hits off of somebody in the wall, and Jeff Caldwell would have had it covered if it hadn't hit the wall. But it takes a crazy bounce and rolls in, and nothing Caldwell can do about it. 2-0. And that's when you could sort of feel the wind come out of the sails right there, sitting here going, oh. And then 5 minutes after that, I believe it was Kelly was the player for Indy, goes fantastic run down the right-hand side, crosses the ball in, and Tyler Pasher, you could have driven a tank and then a convoy behind the tank through the gap between him and the rest of the Memphis 901 FC defenders, as there wasn't anybody within 15 yards of him at that back post. He could have stopped the ball, lined it up like he was a golfer on the 18th green at Augusta National, like he was lining up a putt to win the Masters. He could have stood there, had the defenders charge him, and then kick it in, and it still would have been plenty of time. That's how wide open he was, and I'm not exactly sure where the breakdown was, other than everybody just kind of stopped. Like, they all thought it was that classic case of you get 4 defenders that get burnt and all immediately turn to the AR and put their hand up for offside, and the AR says, no, let's keep going. That's the only thing I can figure that happened. But that made it 3-0, and that was pretty much good night, all she wrote. And Indy goes out 3-0 winners, and Memphis really never came close after that. They had maybe one more half chance, but not really sure where things went wrong, other than just Indy was the better team, and Memphis, there were 1 or 2 fans that I spoke to after the game that were not necessarily happy with what they perceived to be a lack of effort from the team against Indy. I don't necessarily know that there was a lack of effort. I think they were just a step slower in every facet of the game, and Coach McQueen said as much in his post-game press conference. And it's one thing to lose, and Memphis this year has lost just about every way you can imagine losing. You have nights like you do against Indy where you just could completely run out of the building. You have nights where you're the better team for 89 minutes and then you give up a last-second goal. You have nights where it's kind of a back-and-forth game, and then you end up just coming out on the wrong side of it. And Memphis has the 901 has tried to encompass pretty much all of that. And this Indy game is probably really the first time they looked like an expansion team. They really had you got 3 guys called up for international duty. You got Adam Najm was on duty with Afghanistan. You've got Leston Paul and Dwayne Marquette going to the Gold Cup with Trinidad and Tobago, and they also had a friendly against Japan earlier in the week that they had to play in. So you're down 3 guys internationally, and then Tristan Hodges out for the season with the ACL injury. So depth could be a problem, but to just get totally dominated from start to finish, that's not something that we've seen really yet this year. And let's just hope that it's kind of an aberration and a flash in the pan. And then when Najim comes back from international duty, obviously Leston Paul and Dwayne Marquette are going to be gone for a little while, with at least to the end of the Gold Cup group stage. And I would imagine that with them being in the group with the U.S., Panama, and Guyana, I'd imagine that that second place spot is going to be a toss-up between Trinidad and Tobago and Panama. Though with the way the U.S. looked last week against Jamaica, and Jamaica didn't even roll our old pal Rashawn Daly out, by the way, and a team of USL journeymen ran the U.S. out of the building. But hey, everybody, Greg Berhalter, he's got a plan, he's got vision and a system. He's got protein shakes with players' names on them, so nothing's flying under the radar under Greg Berhalter. And he was all rah-rah and orange slices and juice boxes, and they tried hard after that game. But it's going to be interesting to see when Memphis plays Pachuca on the 22nd. The U.S. will be playing Trinidad and Tobago in that second Gold Cup group stage game. And so fingers crossed, A, that the U.S. gets the win, but B, that we get to see Dwayne Marquette and Leston Paul take the field for Trinidad in that game, and maybe get Memphis 901 FC a shout out on some internet on the national TV broadcast. Anyway, went off on a tangent there. Circling back around to topics a little bit closer to home. You got the Open Cup against Orlando on Wednesday out at Mike Rose, and from what I understand is most of the tickets within the actual seating of the stadium have been sold. It sounds like they've had to open up. They're going to do some seating on the grassy hills behind each goal. I don't know any other details other than that. We'll find out when we get out there, I guess. But it should be a super atmosphere. You got an MLS team coming to town, and I think this is going to be a big challenge for Memphis. But this is not an unwinnable game. This game is very winnable. Orlando they're not world beaters. I think right now they're 10th place out of 12 teams in the Eastern Conference of MLS. They have yet to ever make the playoffs. They typically don't string together deep Open Cup runs. There have been a number of times where they have been eliminated by teams from the USL or the old NASL. So, but there was a discussion in the press box at AutoZone Park Saturday night where with MLS taking a break due to the Gold Cup coming up, Orlando might figure to run out a pretty full-strength lineup with guys like Dom Dwyer and Nani from Portugal and guys like that. On one hand, that'd be really cool for Memphis fans to be able to see guys of that caliber come play in Memphis. And on the other side, maybe you don't want Orlando to roll out their best lineup because that means they're actually going to try to win. And I think we would all be very much, like it very much if they ran out a second choice lineup and Memphis was able to get the win. Not that they can't get the win against Orlando's full lineup. I think they can because Orlando's full lineup has proven that day in and day out, they're really not that good. But Nani's played at World Cups and European Championships for Portugal. Dom Dwyer's played at the Gold Cup for the U.S. national team, won an MLS Cup with Sporting Kansas City. So, these are guys that aren't, despite their lowly position in MLS, you don't look at that roster and go, man, where's the production? Where's the goal scoring? They can get the job done in the Open Cup. So Memphis will need to bring their A game. The fans will need to bring their A game. I believe they will. This is not an unwinnable game. And if, you roll the ball out there and anything can happen, and I think it's going to be a pretty exciting, pretty fun time. And, if you win that game against Orlando, then all bets are off and anything can happen, and perhaps you could pull off what Louisville City pulled off in the U.S. Open Cup last year where they went all the way to the quarterfinals and were the last non-MLS team standing. I think that would be fantastic for Memphis 901 FC in their first season to pull something like that off, but we'll just have to wait for Wednesday and see what happens. All right, I think that's just a quick little recap there. I think that's going to do it for us here. as we said, Memphis 901 FC falls 3-0 to Indy 11. Next up, Orlando City of MLS in the U.S. Open Cup out at Mike Rose. Thanks for tuning in and listening to this post-game recap podcast. I've been your host, Lawrence Dockery. Find me on Twitter at LDoc93. Find the 901 Soccer Podcast on Twitter at 901 Soccer Pod. Find us on Facebook, 901 Soccer. It's been a pleasure. Tune in next time. We'll talk to you later.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.